Type 2 equations. This is Unit 2, Lesson 2, the second part, Part 2. So, Lesson 2, Part 2, we're talking about type 2 equations. Type 2 equations means you have two steps to solve for the x. So again, we're going to be doing the opposite operations. So when we see something here, we've got something cuddled up beside x and then something being added or subtracted to x. Okay, so we're doing opposite operations. We go in reverse BEDMAS. So anything being added or subtracted goes first. So we need to remove the number that doesn't have a letter with it. That's the number we need to remove. Right now he's a negative. We need to make him positive to become 0 and disappear. So we're going to make positive on the other side because we got to keep our balance being balanced. If we don't do it to both sides, it won't work properly. So now we end up with 5x by itself, and we add up what's left over on the other side, and that gives us a 15. Now we deal with the number that's being cuddled up beside x. When things are side by side, they mean timesing. When something's being times, you got to do the opposite. The opposite of timesing is dividing. So we're going to divide by 5 for each step. That's going to give us x equals 3. And that's our final answer. They're showing you all of the steps down below. And again, we got to check our work. How do you check your work? You check your left side to be equal to your right side. So you always put the number in for the letter. So I would rewrite my question. 5x subtract 7 equals 8. You put the 3 in where the x is. And when something is cuddled up beside it, that means you are going to times it. So we're timesing it when it's side by side. So that'll give us 15, subtract 7, that gives us 8 equals 8. We did it correctly. Okay, so the left side equals the right side. Turn your page. The next type of type 2 with 2 steps. So something's either being added or subtracted, and then instead of something sitting beside x, it's something sitting underneath x. And if something's sitting under it, it's got a fraction line, and that fraction line means divide. So to get rid of a number underneath it, what we've got to do is do the opposite by multiplying. So that means we are going to times by 8 to both sides. So I got a times by 8 to the other guy. But that's my last step. I can't do that first. My first step is always get rid of that lonely number, the number that's all by itself. You got to get rid of him and ditch him to the other side. So we've got the other number 3, subtracting to become 0 and disappear. Then he subtracts on the other side. So then we end up with x over the 8 equals 9. Now I've got the number on the bottom. The number on the bottom being divided, we times it out like I showed you. We're going to times it out to make it disappear. So we times it out on the other side. We get x equals 72. They show us our work down here where they get x equals 72. And then we check our left side equals right side. So if I put in 72 where x is, I write my 8 plus 3. Plussing 3 equals 12. You solve this part. I get a 9 plus 3, 12 equals 12. So my left side does equal my right side, so we did it correctly. That's when you know you're done. Okay? Turn your page. We're going to look at type 3 equations. This is when sometimes you've got multiple things on the same side of the equal sign. So this is what I call the match and add stage. Okay, so this is where we have to match things on the same side, add them up, and then create the equation. So on this one, we have things that we can add together. How do I know I can add them together? Because they both have the letter x. So if I can add those guys together, I get a 7x equals 7. Now I'm back to a one-step equation. All I've got to do is get rid of the number sitting beside. To get rid of the number sitting beside, we divide. So I would divide by 7 here. And that gets rid of the number sitting in front. So 7 dividing by 7 gives me x equals 1. So there's different types of 3-type equations. All it means is there's going to be multiple things you got to add up on one side of the equal sign. So you add them together and then you solve. So it's the match and add stage. When you match things, you have to make sure that you match items that are identical. Now, what if they have x on the other side? Well, this is where it gets crazy. So I want you to take a look and start drawing the objects. So an x is actually a long stick. A number without an x is a baby square. So I'm just going to draw what I see on both sides. My equal sign is here. And on the other side, I've got a long stick and a baby square. So the idea of this is we're trying to take the long sticks go on the left and the baby squares go on the right. So that's what we're trying to do on the equal sign. So we're trying to put all of the long sticks to the left and all of the baby squares to the right. And that's going to make us be able to match them up and add them up. So all we've got to do is take the 5 to visit the 9 and the 2 to visit the 30. So in order to make something go across the equal sign, you've got to do the opposite function. So that means we're going to subtract 5 to get rid of it. So I would subtract 5 x's. That's going to make the x's on the left-hand side, the right-hand side disappear, and then they're going to show up on the left. That's what's going to happen. So this guy disappears, and now I got to do the same thing with that baby 2. That 2 is a baby square. I got to make it go to the other side. So we got to subtract 2. So I'm going to subtract 2 from the baby squares. This is where we're matching. We're matching it to the item that it matches the size. Is it a long stick, skinny rectangle, or is it a baby square? You have to decide the kind of item it is. If it has a letter, it's a long stick. If it doesn't have a letter, it's a baby square. That's the difference. So this guy will disappear, and now we add up everything we have left over. So this is going to give us 4 x's, and this is going to give us 28. And we put our equal sign back. So that's where we go back down to here. So we get our 4x equals 28. And now we have to divide out the 4 to get rid of it. So I would divide both sides by 4. I get x equals 7. Okay? And that would be my final answer. And the last step is always to check, does your left side equal your right side? So I got the number 7 for x. So I'm going to put it into my question. 9, put my x plus 2 equals 5, put my x plus 30. So my equal signs right here. I want my left side to be equal to my right side. So equals right side. So I'm putting in the letter X I found is 7. Now I have to do BEDMAS on each side. So that means I solve it. So I'm going to solve this. That gives me 63 plus 2 is a 65. So I want to get a 65 on the other side. So this is giving me 35 plus 30 gives me 65. My left side equals my right side. So we did it correctly. Okay. All right. This concludes 2 and 3 step equations.